Welcome, friends. Once again, we are back with another video. Today, we will be reviewing Calvin by Calvin Klein. This fragrance was released in 1981. Now, if you're into vintage perfume, then you will be aware of 1981. 1981 was a huge year for fragrance. Huge. I need to accentuate that. It was huge. I will give you 3, including this one. But there are more. And I'm gonna do like a year, like a year in fragrance about 1981. I might do it about other years as well, because there's a couple of other years that are really good as well. But this one in particular has 3 fragrances which are pretty amazing. And I'm going to include this one simply because I'm just going to include it because you can't stop us. So the other ones, the other 2 I would pick would be, I've got a bottle of Koros here. That was released in 1981. And also Antaeus, which is like back beyond the wall. And I'm not doing that on video because that'll just be a meh. But I have got the Sport Cologne here. This is an unusual fragrance. If you see this, Sport Cologne Vaporizator. That was released for a year in 1985. So rare, it hasn't got a page on Fragrantica. And as we know, Fragrantica is never wrong. So maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe I've been sold a lemon. But I haven't been sold a lemon. Because I know where it came from, and you should smell it. It's absolutely sensational. Anyway, this is another fragrance that was released in 1981. And it smells like it was released in 1981. I will tell you the notes, and then I will tell you what it smells like to me and how it progresses to me. This was, I believe, Calvin's first masculine fragrance. Now, don't quote us on that, because I've got to be honest, I just picked up my camera. My phone, and I decided to review this now because I'm just feeling it. These reviews will get better as time goes on, I'm sure. But what I get from this, we'll start with what they tell us that's in it. And the top notes are chamomile, neroli, bergamot, mandarin orange, and lemon. The mid notes are tarragon, geranium, cinnamon, orange blossom, and lemon verbena. The base notes are patchouli, sandalwood, musk, and vetiver. Now, what I get from it. At the top, when you first spray it on, you get this. I've just sprayed it on my hand. What you get is you get this chamomile, and you do get the chamomile, like this soft sort of, not fuzzy, but like a gentle citrus. So there's the citrus in it isn't sharp in any way. It's not piercing, because it's rounded and softed by the chamomile, and it's like that for this fragrance. This is a very fuzzy fragrance. It's very masculine. But again, I would like to smell this on a woman, see what it smells like. It'd be great. I've said this before. I think that's a huge problem with like these vintage masculine fragrances. You rarely like smell them on a woman, and it's a shame. Because this would be really good. This is like, well, I'll get into it. Chamomile, neroli, bergamot, mandarin orange, and lemon at the top. I get the chamomile big time, and I get the neroli. The other 3 sort of just like add to that, sort of like the round out, like the neroli, like they give it balance rather than they're like noticeable notes. And what you'll find is in a lot of vintage fragrances, you can smell the separation of the notes a lot better than you can now, because the way they used to blend seems to be that everything was like put in there, and you could smell it individually if you tried to smell it. But if you step back from it, it all melds, is that a word? It all sort of like becomes one. And that's what this does. For me, the more prominent top notes are definitely the chamomile and the neroli. Like I said, they're sort of like blended together as if you can like smell them together as one note. But they quickly dry off. The chamomile sort of like you sort of get the impression of chamomile all the way through it. Like the the furry sort of rounded, soft sort of vibe of chamomile. You know, like the calming sort of like warm, fuzzy sort of. It's like it's more like a feeling of chamomile than the actual smell throughout the rest of the fragrance, but it is quite noticeable at the top. As that starts to wear off and burn off, you're presented with, strangely, the base. The musk becomes quite apparent. This is a very musky fragrance, big on musk. And get that again adds to the white sort of furry vibe that you would get around like this kind of fragrance. I don't know if it's real musk because it was released in 81, so I don't know. I think they weren't using deer musk at that time, but it is very furry, very. When I say furry, it's like you couldn't actually see the individual strands of fur. It's more like a cotton ball. I'm giving it the Aaron Terence Hughes hands. Yeah, you just can't see us. It's very like a cotton ball sort of thing. If you can imagine like a deer made out of like cotton wool, you know, it's got that sort of indistinct sort of vibe about it. It's got that colour. That's the sort of colour that comes to mind with this, in the same way that it does with Narciso Rodriguez for him. The sort of grey, fuzzy, sort of like indistinct, like, not, I don't want to say blandness, but like it's got that grey vibe, you know. And then what they seem to have done is taken the grey vibe and then like put little like splashes like they have in Narciso Rodriguez for him. Like there are splashes of other notes, like the tarragon. You get tiny little bit of the tarragon and a little bit of the cinnamon. If you really look for it, it's there. But you do sort of go from the top to the base. To me, it's not a big changing fragrance. It's got a couple of changes in it, but when you consider Kouros and Antaeus, they change from top to bottom. Not like unrecognizably, you know. You can still tell at the top and the bottom of those fragrances that they are that fragrance. Like at the top of Kouros, you know that it's Kouros, and at the bottom of Kouros, you know it's the same fragrance. So they're not like shapeshifters, but they do change, and it is like noticeable. With this changes very subtly, very subtly. It's very clever how it does that. While I can sit here and praise Kouros for going through like the whole spectrum, I can sit here and say this parks its tanks in one part of the spectrum, and it sort of like moves a little from one bit to another, but it doesn't go from here to like here, you know. It shifts very subtly, and it's very clever how like some fragrances can do that. I feel that's quite where we are in fragrance now, that fragrances will change a little bit rather than a lot like they used to, which is a skill in itself. But I do like it when a fragrance will do more for us throughout the day. The mid in this, I mean, the mid, tarragon, geranium, cinnamon, orange blossom, and lemon verbena, just not for me. I don't get much of that at all. I do get a bit of the tarragon, like a little bit of spice, something giving it like a little bit of kick, but not hugely. It's blended very finely, very very subtly, and then you get to the base, and when you're there, when you get there, I mean, it's essentially you're left with like a chamomile musk, and then you've got the sandalwood as well, giving it that sort of softness. Um, it is very musky, but it's done well. Um, and it's very clever how this fragrance sits in its lane and doesn't, but it does deviate a little, but only tiny little shift, and you've got to be there to like perceive them. This is not, I wouldn't say this fragrance now would be for like a fair, like, oh, I say a fair weather fragrance, where it's somebody who's not really into fragrance. I mean, you've got to search this thing out anyway. I was very lucky to find a bottle of this. It was the last one the person had. I got it from Enchanté. Let's have a look, and I'll show you how old it is. Go on, there you are. Calvin Spray Cologne. If you look there, Calvin Klein Cosmetics Co. Calvin Klein made this themselves from their own factory, right? That's how old this bottle is. Said before, fragrance houses used to get a factory and make their own product and make their own fragrances until the bigger houses came along, and sort of started saying, look, outsource to us. We will make this fragrance for you. It'll be easier and better. And that's why fragrances used to smell a lot different in the past from each other, from house to house. You know, I use the analogy now of Tom Ford and Frederic Malle using the same lavender in Beau de Jour and Music for a While. That sort of thing wouldn't have happened 40 years ago, or it would be very unlikely. So yes, this is a very distinct fragrance, but it is of its time. It's very musky and very masculine, but I would still love to smell this on a woman. It lasts 10 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, possibly even more. At first it pushes. For the first 2-3 hours it pushes, and then you are left with a nice light, not light, a nice, what's between light and heavy, average. You're left with sort of like a normal, acceptable, tolerable, like, trail and impression. It's not going to give you a pounding headache, not after the first 2 or 3 hours. I've never had anybody complain. I also have never had anybody give us any compliments with it, which is highly unlikely. Rarely, never get any comments or things like that, me, because I think compliments are fucking, you see all these people making complimented lists and everything like that. I mean, it's just lies. It's just not true, I'm afraid. Unless I'm doing something wrong, which, yeah, well, I've said that now, so there we are. This is a great fragrance, and I am glad I have it, because it's rare, because I like this kind of fragrance, because I like collecting rare and vintage fragrances. I don't necessarily collect these fragrances for impressing other people. I'm not really interested in what other people think about it, which is probably for the best, considering the fragrances that I collect. Some of them are not people pleasing, but not in like a shitty oud kind of way. They're not people pleasing because they're out of fashion. I watched a Monica Chiok list. She just released a list where she was talking about Koros and how she said Koros is a vintage fragrance, it's out of fashion, and I don't like it. And I thought, you know what, that's fair enough. If that's not your thing, that is sound. I can deal with people saying that. in fact, I appreciate her saying that. By the same token, I would say this fragrance is out of fashion. No one likes it, and I do love it. It's the same with all of these fragrances. It's like, I do love it. This is like my thing, and there's enough scope and room for both of those things. And this, I'm afraid, is one of those fragrances that people who are more into the new releases won't like. They won't understand. Or they might understand and they just won't like it, which is fair enough again. So yes, that is my review of Calvin, a musky 81 fragrance that you will see again. I've worn it a couple of times, but I've had it on skin, testing it. It's so soapy. It's got soap. It's got like that soapy sort of cleanness, but like that sort of dry sort of vibe. So yes, this is my third review. So I hope you have enjoyed it. I'll show you the packaging. It is literally just a black monolith, a blue monolith. I do beg your pardon. There, sprayers. I'll show you the sprayer. Can you see the sprayer? Let's have a look. There you go. Decent sprayer. Not the best. Not the worst. There you go. You see that little bit of chamomile and neroli at the top. But yes, this has been my review. I will actually go this time. Sorry about this. I hope you have enjoyed it. And I will see you again. Cheers.